A. Philip Randolph once said, "Freedom is never granted.
Never granted, it is won.
Justice is never given.
Never given, it is exacted.
The struggle must be continuous.
Must be continuous. For freedom.
For freedom is never a final fact.
A. Philip Randolph, the leader of the sleeping car porters, backed his words with action in 1950 when he and two other civil rights giants, Roy Wilkins, president of the NAACP, and religious leader Arnold Aronson, forged an alliance to fight for freedom and justice. Their call was for a national civil rights mobilization.
That mobilization drew some 4,000 to 5,000 people from 50 or 60 different organizations. That was really the origin of the Leadership Conference.
These visionary leaders knew the struggle for civil rights would be won not by one group standing alone, but through a coalition standing together. The Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, LCCR, was founded at a time of great change. Brown versus the Board of Education, the Montgomery bus boycott, Little Rock Central High School. Then in 1957, thanks in part to LCCR, Congress passed the first civil rights law since 1875. The 60s accelerated the pace of change. The Freedom Riders, the sit-ins. Backed by federal troops, James Meredith enrolled at Ole Miss.
Riots were breaking out in Oxford.
Americans are free and sure to disagree with the law, but not to disobey it.
It was a new era in Washington and a new administration. In 1963, a century after the Emancipation Proclamation, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom brought together 250,000 people, and Martin Luther King Jr. proclaimed his dream. That same year, after intense pressure from LCCR, President Kennedy submitted the most comprehensive civil rights bill ever to come before the U.S. Congress. It was a time when inspired advocates spoke truth to power, and power listened.
But really, it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Executive Order on Affirmative Action, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. These laws are the embodiment of the most successful, peaceful revolution in human history. Unlike past battles, however, today's struggles take place in a polarized political climate. Bipartisanship sometimes seems like a distant memory.
Civil rights remains the unfinished agenda in American life. We see this routinely on Capitol Hill, where our over 190 member organizations work every day to prevent things like the adoption of a repressive immigration bill that would violate the civil rights and civil liberties of persons here in the United States, or on the issue of judicial independence, where we work to prevent right-wing judges from being confirmed to the federal courts, judges that would actually turn back the clock on civil rights and civil liberties.
To meet this challenge, LCCR and the LCCR Education Fund are enhancing capacity in core areas, including policy, grassroots, research, and communications.
I have a dream.
Whether it's based on race or dislike of people, they just don't want them involved.
The town of Oxford is an armed camp.
We need the arm of the Voting Rights Act and the strength in it.
The Leadership Conference on Civil Rights Education Fund is proud to be raising awareness about voting rights at a time when this fundamental American right is again before the Congress.
Today, the Leadership Conference strategy goes beyond the halls of Congress and even traditional media. It makes its case directly to the people through its grassroots network and via the internet and civilrights.org, the site of record for civil rights news and information.
When I think of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, I think of our nation's finest.
I think about a broad movement.
Inclusive and encompassing.
Working together, sharing together, and mentoring each other.
To ensure real equality.
When I think of Leadership Conference, I think of empowerment.